What's really interesting to see is that, you were connected to Homi much before Rocket Boys had released.
Oh, people love
There's
this
a
now.
very
This has become a
interesting-
major talking point now. People have loved this story.
A trait that I think really inspired me, and something that how Amrita Shah, the biographer of Vikram Sarabhai, explained it, and how she sort of what she calls it is equanimity, which is a great trait about him, and how he kind of chose to tackle situations when he was up against challenges.
No disrespect meant to Rami Malek, but I wish that he hadn't played Freddie Mercury is all I can start with. And then I wish it was me. I think that they could have another person could have played him, with even better and with even greater detailing. Like, for example, Nasir in Pestonji. You don't think he's not a Parsi for even a second. I mean, it is brilliant, his detailing. He's so intellectual and heady, and he never has a laugh, and you're always intimidated by his process because he's just repeating the lines to himself and walking around in circles. No, we had a great time shooting. We had a great time, and I don't think he's serious at all. I think he's a fun-loving young guy that's trying to do his best and trying to figure out how to solve problems, which I think is very similar to what these two characters were going through. So I'd always known of the Bhabha family, and I'd always known of each of them independently and their interests.
In fact, Jim, your dialogue, that's the Parsiest name I've ever heard. People have been talking about it a lot because of the humor.
Parvana Irani sounds like a Parsi grandmother's name.
Thanks to Jim and Ishwak. Thank you guys for bringing us Rocket Boys.
We haven't brought it. The creators have brought it. Very honestly, yeah. We just were lucky to play these roles. Apart from that, the real thanks goes to Sid Roy Kapoor and MA Entertainment and Abhay Pannu. I'm not saying that being like, I'm such a humble and self-effacing actor. Ishwak will say very clearly that I'm not that. It's just that in this particular case, it really is true. The amount of work and detailing that those guys have done is just extraordinary.
Exactly. That's what I was coming to. That is the series more detailed with science, and will it put forth the facts that viewers are not really aware of?
It's like we all have known these gentlemen, these extraordinary gentlemen, and the amazing cast of characters that existed at that point of time, whether it was in politics or the world of science or nation builders, industrialists, the great Sarabhais, Kasturbai, and a whole lot of wonderful people who laid the foundation of modern India. It's you get to know about all of that world, and as I picked, the one thing that I learned from this entire exercise was one of the things which sort of stayed with me was the concept of interdependence, which came from science, which is what I got as I was prepping and doing this thing. And it's so true in this case, in the case of this story and the world that we live in, and those times, that all these people that I mentioned, these amazing cast of characters, they all believed in this, or at least these two gentlemen believed in it. And that's why they used their resources, traveled, did all kinds of things to achieve something for science, which wasn't just research based. That is something they were doing too. But they did this thing because it would affect lives and better lives of millions of Indians.
What's really interesting to see is that, you were connected to Homi much before Rocket Boys had released.
Oh, people love this now. This has become a major talking point now. People have loved this story. Okay,
exactly. Run us through that. A lot of people, not really aware of it. Tell us.
To tie it to the show straight off the bat, I hope that the show does manage to basically get rid of the stereotype of scientists being stodgy, boring, intellectual people. Because in the case of these two men particularly, it's just not true. When you talk to Mallika Sarabhai about the two of them, she's like, being around Daddy and Homi was just so much fun. They were just full of stories, and they were charming, and they were just funny and pulling each other's legs and didn't take each other seriously. And when you think of the breadth of Dr. Bhabha's interests, like truly varied and diverse, arts, culture, politics, human behavior, and science. And I believe that he really felt that all of these things were basically linked. They aren't separate. They aren't like how we like to constantly create divisions between. You can't even do an interview without people asking, "So OTT ya feature film, kaun se better hai?" And it's like we don't need these divisions. You don't need them. You don't need to make them. There doesn't need to be a competition amongst things. There actually needs to just be things informing each other, learning from the way that they ended that feature film, being like, ooh, that is a good cliffhanger. Or wow, or they've really closed off this chapter. And how do you close off a chapter? For example, I just believe that everything informs each other. You don't need the competition. And I think that he thought creativity was the thing that basically linked all of these things together. It doesn't matter how smart you are. If you can't think creatively, if you can't think sometimes emotionally, then you aren't going to be able to solve the problem in the same way. And I think the two of them did that consistently. That said, even in Jahangir Bhabha, who's Homi Bhabha's brother, even in his last move, he auctioned off his entire estate and gave all of the proceeds to the NCPA to ensure that the city's art and culture continues to flourish, that there's always a place for classical music and modern Indian dance, and that NCPA continues to adorn its walls with modern Indian artists, and that all of this continues to be supported, theatre. So I'd always known of the Bhabha family, and I'd always known of each of them independently and their interests. But because of doing plays at the NCPA, and of course, whatever you've read as a kid. Now, it just so happened that my uncle, who runs an auction house called Pandol's, was given the opportunity to auction off the estate. So I'm flipping through the catalog, of things that I definitely can't afford, and there's this desk that I was like, oh, what an interesting Art Deco desk! It's beautiful. I haven't seen many curved desks, semicircular desks. It's usually just pretty rectangular and straight lines and whatnot. And also, it's not just that. The desk is curved, and which is the top layer. That sits upon two separate entities, which one is more like a cupboard and one is a set of drawers. And that sits on two balls, essentially, that the entire thing balances, because the flat piece, the semicircular curved piece, sits on top of those two pieces that otherwise have no connection. So if you lift the top piece off, they too would just fall over, because they're both balancing on these two balls. And I was like, oh, that's sweet. I was like, hey, Dad, do you think we need this for the house? I mean, shouldn't you get it? My dad was lucky enough to make his money midway through his life, and so he could afford it. And I was like, what do you think, etc. And I was kind of teasing him, and I didn't expect him to actually go ahead and do it. But he bid for the desk, and we got it. And so I've been working on this desk, writing, reading, responding to scripts for the last 9 years.
Wow. And here comes, rocket.
Long story. Sorry.
Long story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Interesting story.
Yes. Ishwak, yes. Ishwak, what was it like, entering the thoughts of Vikram Sarabhai and, just being in that headspace? I mean, were there any traits that you discovered about your character that you possibly didn't even know before the shoot?
About myself, you mean?
Yes.
Or the character?
Oh, about the character. What was it that, that you realized?
You're finding it's a trip, is all I'd say. It's a high. and you find so many things within. You're finding the person within, because I guess that's how I respond to writing any text I pick up. You find parallels, and it just comes to you and makes you aware of a certain personality, a certain emotion, and I guess the choices and the true self. It's like, this Ed Norton's character says in Birdman, I don't pretend anywhere, I only pretend out there, I don't pretend on stage. Because you can't if you're trying to put up an honest performance. You can't pretend. You can't bullshit yourself. You need to be honest. And for that, you got to ask yourself some difficult questions. That's what made me aware of a lot of things about myself, about interpersonal relationships, about the choices I make when I'm in sort of, difficult situation. All these things, I mean, the journey that I kind of underwent as the character, and all those things that I experienced as Vikram Sarabhai. But so many things, about Vikram, about Dr. Sarabhai, which were great. And these are things that are mentioned in his biography. And a lot of things, the great things that he did, and you can learn so much from them. But a trait that I think really inspired me, and something that how Amrita Shah, the biographer of Vikram Sarabhai, explained it, and how she sort of what she calls it is equanimity, which is a great trait about him, and how he kind of chose to tackle situations when he was up against challenges. So it's not like, he's not human enough to sort of face or feel the pressure, and it's not like he's indestructible. He feels like anyone else would, it's like even though he's this larger than life character who's achieved so much, who's fought against odds without resources, built institutes and organizations. But what was it about him, and what was it about these men that they still did, that had to be done, was that makes you realize what humans are capable of. If they have that unbreakable spirit, if they put their education, first of all, invest in education, right kind of education, and put that to right use. You can do so much for yourself, for your family, for your community, and for the country.
Yeah, man. The way that they married personal ambitions to like actually helping the country is inspiring in its own way, because either of these men could easily have gone abroad and had the resources and the technology that could actually do the research that was like that was buzzing inside of their heads, and they both chose not to. They both chose to stay here, deal with the countless setbacks, and pull a reality out of their heads, literally forge their vision for the future into a reality despite all of the incredible setbacks. So like what Ishwak was saying is bang on, that essentially it's not that they didn't go through the regular range of human emotions or setbacks that anyone would experience. It was how they chose to deal with those things, how they chose to overcome those things, how they chose to transform setbacks into advantages, that makes a person what we would call quote unquote great.
Right. In fact, Jim, your dialogue, that's the Parsiest name I've ever heard. People have been talking about it a lot because of the humor.
Parvana Irani sounds like a Parsi grandmother's name.
So people have been reacting to it. People have been saying that there's a lot of humor in it, and it seems very real because it's a Parsi man who's saying the dialogue. So was it then really important to play Homi Bhabha for you, and was it easier for you to play the character because you're a Parsi and things just come naturally? I mean, you don't have to sort of think.
No disrespect meant to Rami Malek, but I wish that he hadn't played Freddie Mercury is all I can start with. And then I wish it was me. And then so I was very, very grateful to be given a shot at possibly the other most famous, most well-known Parsi in existence. I think that they could have another person could have played him, with with even better and with even greater detailing. Like, for example, Nasir in Pestonji, you don't think he's not a Parsi for even a second. I mean, it is brilliant, his detailing. So I don't think that, I don't believe that, I believe the representational question is actually a very complex, nuanced one, and can't be answered in this thing where we're talking about Rocket Boys, because I think it deserves a whole discussion, and I don't think I know enough about what that exactly means to really discuss it. But I do think that because I know that world, and I know the world of somebody who's lived in multiple countries and has traveled around a lot and feels comfortable in other countries as well. That those two aspects of his life, I didn't need to obsess over. I didn't need to spend time thinking like, how will I now portray this? Those things came easier to me. As a consequence, I could think about different things. I could think about, how does a genius approach scenes? How does a genius approach conflict? How does a genius approach scenes where he doesn't know what's going to happen, where he's just having a laugh? I could think about, how he speaks, and more again than how he speaks, literally of like how fast his mind works. Does he take the conversation one step forward, or does he take the conversation 3 steps forward with everything that he says? How brief? How much can we use brevity to his advantage? How many times can he make a joke that we don't completely understand until later, or even in the moment he's just made connections to things that we wouldn't make, and that can only come through workshopping and taking 2 or 3 days agonizing over what it should be and coming up with what the person comes up with in an instant. And that shows how fast his brain works.
There was this one question that your fans wanted to know for both of you, that you're known for playing serious characters on screen. You take up dramatic and serious roles, which is why you're always interpreted as very serious individuals. Is that true?
Ishwak is extremely serious.
Comedy.
I mean, he's so intellectual and heady, and he never has a laugh, and you're always intimidated by his process because he's just repeating the lines to himself and walking around in circles. And no, we had a great time shooting. We had a great time, and I don't think he's serious at all. I think he's a fun-loving young guy that's trying to do his best and trying to figure out how to solve problems, which I think is very similar to what these two characters were going through. We had a laugh on set, so that you wouldn't get bogged down by the idea of somebody's legacy and their greatness and the responsibility that you have, which can constrict you and straitjacket you and make you make a cardboard character because you're constantly worrying about what would this great person do. And I think the mood on set that Abhay created was very much not that. It was to try to be truthful and solve the problem that is there, and I think it was great having Ishwak along because he understood that, and he had a laugh with all of us. What do you think, Ishwak? Swanky?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was more enjoyable when Jim was around because he really knows how to change the mood and bring the party to the set. We had a lot of fun. I think that's the thing, that's the success, and it is a success. I call it a success because I think it was a formidable thing to do, to make a series like this. And credit goes from the makers to the crew and every member of the crew, because we shot through a very, very difficult, I guess one of the most difficult times in my life that I've seen. We all have probably underwent, went through so much difficult times, but everyone brought it every time, every single day throughout this period of shoot, and we had to start, we had to stop, but I didn't see that thing, that the enthusiasm and the zest and the excitement that we all had on day one, that ever was any less or anything changed till the last day. Actually, I think we shot the last day together, right? That was fun. I mean, right from
Yeah.
first day to the last day, it was
Yeah.
like it was same intensity. I still remember the first scene and the last scene. It was all about getting the thing done. And yes, well, we are pretty serious. Like, and this man can be very, very serious. As fun-loving as he is, offset, on-set, everyone. I mean, and again, it's just not just me and him. The entire ensemble, Devendu, Rajat. I mean, the work ethic just inspired me. Regina, she like one of the days, she like the kind of thing, the commitment that she showed throughout the shoot. It was inspiring. So I mean, I've got a lot of, I've learned a lot from these guys, all of them. It's been a wonderful journey.
Yes.
I think you can have a good time on set if you've done the preparation required to have that good time, and everyone was just bringing it. Scenes where K.C. Shankar or Dibyendu had to lead the action, you could just sit back as the co-actor and just enjoy their performance and react.
It was enjoyable.
Them.
Yes,
because they were surprising you and just adding so much to how you react and how you feel based on what they've given you. And so then, why do we need to stay serious once the cut is done? I mean, you've done so well, you've done so brilliantly. I just have to wait for you to do that again. Now let's have a smoke and a laugh,